For the past 16 years, the Boston Red Sox Foundation has been doing its part for the community by supporting health, education, and youth sports. Taking over this year as its new executive director is a familiar face in the local sports scene in her work with the Boston Celtics and the Boston Scholar Athletes program, as well as her play on the field with the Boston Breakers. We'd like to welcome Bekah Salwasser. Thank you very much for being with us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Bekah, explain, what is the mission of the foundation exactly?
Absolutely. The mission of the Red Sox Foundation is to really, in partnership with Red Sox Nation, so all of our fans, make a difference in the lives of children, families, veterans, and communities in need all across New England through three core focus areas, and that's health, education, and recreational opportunities.
Now, my first assumption is this is a foundation just supported by the team or the organization, but it's not as simple as that.
No,
right?
it's not, and you're not alone in that thinking. Right, so most people think that we get most of our funding from the Red Sox when that's not true. As an executive director of a true public charity, we're a nonprofit 501c3 organization, we fundraise all of our own funds. And so most of my time is spent fundraising, and we bring in a lot of our funds through the events that we host throughout the year. And so we work incredibly hard as a foundation to make sure that we can raise upwards of $10 million a year to be able to then donate some of that money out to the community to deserving nonprofits that write in and ask for small grants. So,
well, one example recently is the renovation of a ball field in Roxbury, right?
Yes, that's right. So we were able to, in partnership with MLB and Scott's, refurbish and renovate the field at the Boys and Girls Club, the Yawkey field behind the Boys and Girls Club there in Roxbury. So really exciting opportunity to make sure that young people have access to great fields of play.
Now, when I was growing up in another part of Boston, we didn't need a foundation. If there was a park, a bunch of kids would be down there playing ball. Of course, everybody's mom was at home, too.
Yeah, right.
Explain what's changed since then and how you have to deal with that.
Absolutely, and so you're right. We've seen slightly a decrease in participation in some of our sports. And so that's why it's incredibly important that foundations like the Red Sox Foundation exist, because we have a mission of making sure that young people have access to sport, and we're doing that through our RBI program. So RBI stands for Reviving Baseball in the Inner Cities. It's a program that was actually started by MLB about 25 years ago, but we absorbed it as a team about 14 years ago and have been running it ever since. And what it is a summer youth sports league for young baseball and softball players. And so they play between the summer months of June and September, about 12 weeks of play, and it's totally free to them. We provide them all the uniforms, all the equipment. We get all the volunteer coaches and permit all the fields. And so really it's focused on making sure youth ages 9 to 18 have access to sport.
Well, if kids aren't worried about safety in the streets of their neighborhood, they might be too busy with computer games to appreciate baseball. But go back a little bit. Tell us what they're missing, because your first view of Fenway Park when you were a kid, what was that like?
It was amazing. So both of my parents worked for Boston Public Schools. They've since retired, but I remember my dad was working right over at a school by Fenway. And because I come from a large family, we weren't able to afford tickets all the times to games. And so my dad would often bring us on top of his school building, which actually had a line of sight into Fenway Park. And so I remember very early on my first vision of the field being just this grand, vision of green, the sea of green, and seeing these tiny little players running across the field and feeling this kind of total emotion and connection to this sport. And so I've always loved baseball since. I played Babe Ruth baseball in Cambridge growing up, but then again switched to soccer later on.
Now, when I was your age at that point, I was getting my baseball fix at the Park League games in my neighborhood. But what's the connection between that exposure to Fenway Park and what happened to you later becoming a professional soccer player?
Well, I think, sport is in many ways a vehicle for young people to express themselves, to have space to become themselves, is a release for them, is also a space to make friends, right? And of course be physically active, and we know the intrinsic values of being physically active. But for me, I was fortunate, like I said, to be exposed to not only viewing sports, but also playing youth sports, starting at 4 years old in Cambridge. And so again, I think it's so critically important to expose young people, get them the access that they need to sports at a young age, because it will carry on. Again, like I said, we all know the values of being physically active, but beyond that, there are so many social, emotional benefits to participating in sports. It's truly, in my mind, an equalizer for so many young people to be on a field and just be an athlete as part of a team.
This is Being the News, and we're talking with Bekah Salwasser from the Red Sox Foundation. Bekah, you also work with athletes through the Scholar Athletes program in Boston's public high schools. And this isn't just about getting them some new equipment, or you had spaces in the schools. Why were those spaces so important?
Well, again, going back to the mission of Scholar Athletes, it really was combining academics with athletics. And so we found that that was really our magic sauce. And so at every corner of that program, we really tried to make sure that student athletes were coupled with a caring adult that would advocate for them across high school. And so making sure that there were actual physical spaces in high schools where young people could go during the day after school, we found was really, really important for young people to just, again, the access of it all.
Now, I've met people at that age, and they would say how motivated they would be for playing in a game, but when it came to academics, it was almost like a non-starter. And yes, this program, you had tutors working with the kids. Did they help deal with that gap at all?
They did, and they also knew that the Boston Public Schools set a regulation that you couldn't even participate in your sport if you weren't maintaining a certain GPA level. So there was a restriction there, right? That was somewhat of a consequence for young people to make sure that their grades were up above the minimum GPA requirement. And so that's what the organization was really focused on doing, is making sure young people were above that GPA minimum requirement to participate in athletics. And so moving forward to the Red Sox Foundation, it's very exciting to be involved with and running the Red Sox Scholars Program, which is working with Boston Public youth, Boston Public School students, starting in their 7th grade, to make sure that, again, at every corner of their academic career, if you will, between middle and high school, they are paired with a caring adult that advocates for them and makes sure that they're graduating high school and successfully moving on to college.
Where do you see taking the foundation in the future as far as things to do or things that people need help with?
So I think for the foundation, going back to what you had mentioned about our mission, we're focused on health, education, and recreational opportunities. I think we have so much more opportunity to do more within each one of those focus areas. So within health, we partner with 3 core organizations. We partner with the Jimmy Fund, the Dimmick Center, and Home Base. For education, we run our own program, the Red Sox Scholars Program. And then with recreational opportunities, we run RBI. I think that there's more bandwidth there for either more partners, more programs, and more, again, outcomes for our young people. And so I'm really excited about the future for the foundation, in that we can grow it. We can grow the giving, we can grow the doing, and we can grow the fundraising as well.
Now, one thing that's different from baseball, which is still played by guys for the most part, the importance of getting into sports for young women, girls. You lived through that at a time when that was not as common. How important is that?
Very important, and I think that's another key focus of mine, is making sure that we are equitable, if not more focused on young girls with their ability and access to sport and to play and to academic resources, professional, social resources, really ensuring that our young girls have the same pathway laid out in front of them as our young boys do.
Of course, you're also looking for help from the Red Sox Nation or anybody else in the neighborhoods too.
We are.
You got a raffle for. Explain how that
That's
works.
right. Yeah. So as I mentioned, so much of my time is spent in fundraising, and we can only exist by the generosity of our donors. And so one of our key fundraisers is called the 50-50 raffle. So if you've ever been to a game, you've probably heard or seen one of our raffle sellers yelling 50-50. What that is every fan will buy a ticket, and at the end of the night, there's a gross revenue. There's a pool of money, maybe 10, maybe 15, maybe $25,000. At the end of the night, we pull a winning raffle number, and the fan gets to take 50% of that raffle proceeds home with them, and then we keep the other 50%. And so new this year, we just moved sales online. So you don't only have to be in Fenway Park to buy the ticket. Now you can be in the comfort of your own living room. You just log on to redsox.com/5050, 5050, and you can buy your ticket. You have to be over 18, and you have to be in Massachusetts.
All right. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
Bekah Salwasser. We'll have more news in just a moment.